Okay. Okay. I hope that everyone can see us, everyone can have access to this webinar. Thank you all for attending. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this SRC Young Chemists webinar on nuclear chemistry. We are very glad to have you all here to have a discussion with three experts in the field of nuclear chemistry and also radioprotection. We have the chance to have among us Dr. Pascal Froment, Dr. Thibaut Gendron, and Dr. Sébastien Pennings, with whom we will get acquainted in a few moments. I would like to first explain to you the schedule of this webinar. It will be divided into two sections of about 45 minutes. The first one will be a short introduction and then 3 times 15 minutes of presentation for each speaker, and then you will have some pressing question. So you will be able to ask directly to a specific speaker one question. And the way you will do that is you have the Q&A or Q&R section in the Teams meeting. And when you go there, you will have some here already comments made, and you can go and select. If you want to ask a specific question to one of the speakers, you can comment under the comment for that specific speaker. And then afterwards, for the general questions, you will be able to send them all here. So please use the Q&R or Q&A screen if you want to ask a question. Afterwards, after we have done that small introductory part where each speaker will be able to present his background and his experience in the field of nuclear chemistry, we will have an open discussion between our guests and they will answer your questions. So we will gather all your questions. My colleague Geraldine will take them all and ask them to our experts. And the idea is to have an open discussion. So the idea is to have quite general questions that all of our speakers can have a word on. And this webinar will be recorded and will be posted afterwards on our YouTube channel if you want to see it later. Just before we begin with the main topic, a quick word on the SRC Young Chemist. Who are we? Well, we are a division of the Société Royale de Chimie, and we aim to connect young chemists of the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, young chemists, be it master and PhD students, but also young postdocs and young chemists in the industry. How do we do that? Well, we organize several events, such as our annual seminar day, which will happen soon in UC-Louvain on May 29. We organize also some factory visits. We organize this webinar and more. If you like what we do and you want to join us, well, you have several options. The first of which is to join our board. It's for any master student, PhD student, or postdoc, or any chemist that is under 30 years old. And the board is quite a dynamic committee of young chemists. We have fun and it's a really nice atmosphere to be working with. Then you can also participate in our events. You are participating in this webinar, and I thank you all for that. The next ones, well, we have the 20 kilometers of Brussels, but it's closed right now. But we hope to see you all on our seminar day, so on the 29th of May. Finally, you can follow us on our socials. You have our LinkedIn, our Facebook page, and our website. And for next year, so that you know, we will be organizing our seminar at Liège, and we will definitely need some helping hands to organize this seminar. Talking about the seminar for this year, so at UC-Louvain on the 29th of May 2026, we will be discussing advanced tools and cutting-edge techniques in modern chemistry. The abstract submissions and the registration are already open. The info is on LinkedIn and on our website, and we hope to see you there in person. Thank you for your attention. And now, without further ado, let's begin this first SRC Young Chemist webinar. And our first guest tonight will be Dr. Pascal Froment. He obtained his PhD in nuclear chemistry from the Catholic University of Louvain, focusing on the emission of fission products from damaged nuclear reactors. After a first career as a certified expert in radioprotection, he is now General Director and Certified Expert in Radioprotection of B.Sure, an organization responsible for radiation protection and the provision of practical solutions for challenges encountered in nuclear and also radiological facilities. He is also an active member of the Belgian Association for Radioprotection and a member of the Scientific Council of the AFCN, the Federal Agency for Nuclear Control. And on top of all of that, he is an invited professor at UC Louvain, teaching nuclear chemistry and management of radioactive sources. The floor is yours, Pascal Froment. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to these discussions. Effectively, I am maybe a young scientist some years ago, but I'm still young, I think. And you are always young if you live your work and you enjoy what you are doing. In fact, effectively, I have made my thesis on the dispersions of radioactive products from damaged reactor, nuclear power plants. But that was already a second step. In fact, the first step was the interaction of cesium-137 in the clay minerals. So it's in one type of the world of interaction between the radioactivity and the environment. The second was the emission of dispersions of fission products. And as a third step, I have worked for 3 years in the physical department of UCL on the production of radioactive product. After that, effectively, I start a career as a radio protection expert, RPE, following the European regulations. And since 2002, I am working as an expert in radio protection in Belgium, but now also in Luxembourg and France and other countries in the world. The next maybe not so funny place where I have to go is the Cisjordanie in June, but it will be maybe delayed. We will see. Anyway, I'm not working anymore in effectively nuclear chemistry. I'm not doing some experience. I'm just it's not maybe too limiting, but I'm an expert in radio protections. That means that I'm advise the expert. I'm advising also the persons who are working with radioisotopes, with source of radiations like cyclotrons, accelerators, X-ray installations too. And I'm advising them on the way to work with these systems to protect themselves, but also to protect the public around the installations and to protect also the environments and to protect also the colleagues who are working close to you. For example, we have already made some experience with together with Sébastien on some specific application. I'm sure that he will discuss that too. And what is very funny in my work, it's the fact that I'm not doing all the days the same things. I'm changing. For example, today I'm quite a little bit tired due to the fact that I'm still awake since 1 o'clock this morning to make some control for vehicles, transport of nuclear materials. I have met 3 different companies today for the transport, one for the medical applications, one for the nuclear power plants, and this last one is for industrial applications. And tomorrow I will be together with Sebastian in hospitals to make some control on hospital and installations of nuclear medicines, radiology, radiotherapy, and so on. And on Friday I'm doing something else and not always in the same world, and it's very funny for me. Yeah, what remains from my chemicals academic careers, it's the fact that I have learned a lot, and now I use those experience and I use those competence to understand what are the needs of, or I will say client, we say exploitant. In fact, we are collaborating with different type of installations. And we can understand the needs and we can understand what are the limitations for the persons there and for the teams who sometimes dreams to do something, but the dreams and the reality we try to converge. The way to do it is sometimes also a little bit funny to find the good application, the good protection, the good shielding for the persons, or the good way to work. Yes, we are far from the nuclear chemistry, but in fact we are always in the nuclear chemistry. But it's as said by Geraldine during the previous discussions, it's a mix between the chemistry, biology, for the impact on the environment and the peoples and the man itself, and also so the physics, the biology, and the chemistry. And a little bit also the engineering to construct, for example, a bunker to accept a rhodotron or cyclotrons. When we are speaking about the shielding, you have to be able to calculate the shielding, and if you need 1, 2, 3 meters of concrete, it's far from the chemistry, okay, some maybe, but in fact you have to understand what are the possible reaction in the concrete when you are using your installations. In one side, the physical reaction, I mean, what can be happens in the concrete, what is the shielding, but also what can be created in the shieldings. What are the goal of your installation is to produce some radioactive isotopes, but you are not just creating this one, you are activating all the installations. So my previous career asked me every day, in fact. I said that at the beginning of my talk, what is funny, and someone has already said that if you enjoy your job, you never work at all. And for me, it's the case anyway. Yeah, I can tell you a lot, but we are limited in time. Just for your final comprehensions, we are working, for example, it's a new company, but we are working with in Belgium and in the world more than 750 different exploitants. So it's not so limited that the people can think at the beginning. We know in Belgium the nuclear and nuclear chemistry, yes, it's Tihange and Doel and the nuclear power plant, but there are a lot of applications. If you are taking only the people who are working on the Tihange site and Doel site, you can reach more or less 4,000 people. If you are taking all the people who are working in nuclear and physical chemistry, nuclear chemistry and physical chemistry, nuclear chemistry and nuclear physics, there are more than 40,000 people. So that means that it's not so limited. We are working with dentists, we are working with radiology, we are working with transport company, with research lab, with nuclear medicines, with nuclear power plant. So it's a very diverse work in Belgium, but it's also our experience in the nuclear field in Belgium is also recognized outside Belgium, and it's well known that we have a package here in Belgium with really competent and really efficient. You know, I'm sure that you know the Silicon Valley in the USA. You have to know that the nuclear valley is in Belgium. and it's recognized in the world. So that means that nuclear chemistry and nuclear physics, who was maybe some years ago maybe a domain who was not so attracting, it's really attracting for the moment in Belgium. So don't think that it's finished in Belgium. It's still start. We are just at the beginning of the story, of a new story, I will say, with the new nuclear reactor, the SMR, with the new applications in medicals, type of applications, the diagnostics, but also the therapy, and Sebastian will certainly say something about that. So we are at the very beginning of a new story, and there are a lot of companies who are implemented in Belgium and who are creating works and research in Belgium. And we are working for 3 main companies for the moment, who will produce the more large amount of actinium, for example, in the world. So don't think it's a deadline. Don't think it's a dead story. It's a still start, and it will grow, and certainly grow at a quick speed in Belgium. I don't know if I have still time, but there is certainly some questions for me. If not, it's for later, no problem.
We might have a few pressing questions. Maybe the first one, and it would be interesting for us, is how do you distinguish the difference between nuclear chemistry, nuclear physics? Sometimes the barrier can be quite thin. What is your definition of nuclear chemistry?
In fact, the nuclear chemistry cannot exist without the nuclear physics, and the nuclear physics cannot exist without the nuclear chemistry. We are between, in our work at least, we are between the two every day, every hours. When we are speaking about the interaction of the beam in the material, it's more the physics. But if we are discussing the link and the reaction between the component, it's more the chemistry part. So it's not dissociated. For me, it's the same. And I say also it was also the nuclear biology, I will say, the radiobiology. Everything is linked anyway. Once we are working for the protection of the peoples, so the peoples are the biology, and we are working with concrete wall, for example. It's physics, and it's always physics, nuclear, and biology.
Thank you. And maybe a shorter one. What would be one experience, one mission that particularly stood out to you, that somewhere to go, you had to go, something you had to do?
Well, there are a lot of 2 weeks ago, I went on a site, and the question of the persons there: can you analyze the material who is there? Is it radioactive or not? My questions: how much? I mean, what's the amount of material? The answer was 500,000 cubic meter. Okay, that's mean 1 million ton of material. So that's one experience. One other is: can you start now to go to England to measure for the activation on a cyclotrons? It's really urgent. Can you go now? No, it's not possible, but tomorrow, well. And yes, it's really funny.
Thank you very much, Pascal.
My pleasure.
So our next guest is Dr. Thibault Gendron. He holds a PhD from the University of Strasbourg. His expertise spans organic and medicinal chemistry, radiochemistry, and molecular imaging. After several years as a postdoc researcher at the University College London and experience in industry at Traces, is now an associate professor at the University of Liège, teaching nuclear chemistry and organic chemistry. And he leads a research team and conducts research in radiopharmaceutical sciences at the Giga Cyclotron Facilities platform. Thibault Gendron, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen up. Can you confirm you see it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it should
wonderful.
be live.
Perfect. All right. So indeed, I will talk about another part of nuclear chemistry and nuclear science. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the application of that in medicine, because we can use radioactivity for medical application. I'm sure you already know a little bit about that. But just to give you a brief definition of what we are talking about, here we are talking about using radioactive substances for diagnosis and treatment of disease. And what radioactive substances are we talking about? So essentially, we're talking about a molecule that has been designed specifically to go and target a disease accumulate there. So that molecule here that we prepare as organic chemists, that's part of my job, will serve as vehicle to carry the radioactive atom that is onto that molecule. And there we have that radioactive atom that we will use its power, will use its decay, either for diagnostic or for therapeutic indication. And the whole thing, the whole construct is what we call a radiopharmaceutical. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the challenges of preparing a radiopharmaceutical and what it means exactly. So how can we use it? Very, very briefly. So when we want to do diagnosis, we would inject that drug, that radioactive drug, that will accumulate where it's supposed to. So for example, let's say a tumor, lungs tumor, and we will be able to detect the radioactivity from the outside because radioactive radiations are very easy and very powerful, and we can detect them throughout the body. And in the therapeutic application, we will use another property, another particularity of radioactivity, which is the fact that some of those radioactive atoms, their energy, the energy that comes from their decay, can be used to destroy things, to destroy cells. I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but the idea is that those radiation at a certain dose, as Pascal says, they can have an effect, they can have a biological effect, and that's what we want to do. Now, I'm not going to say the obvious, but those molecules, those radiopharmaceuticals, they are not naturally occurring. You can't find it in the trees. So obviously, you would have to prepare them. And most of the radioactive atoms that we do use in nuclear medicine, they are not natural neither. So we need to fabricate them. We need to use all the systems that Pascal mentioned to prepare them, to fabricate them. The molecular moiety as well, that structure here, that vehicle, we need to create it. It has to be designed. It comes from our mind. And it has to be tailored to each and every disease that we want to target. And finally, obviously, we need chemistry. We need chemistry to be able to link the two together. And that brings me actually to the question that you just mentioned. What is nuclear chemistry? Actually, nuclear chemistry is a very big field into which you can find a lot of various topics. You can find what we mentioned about nuclear fuel, uranium, energy, radioprotection. That's what we just discussed. We can also find medicine, biology. And my field of expertise and what I'm going to discuss today is about radiolabeling. Radiolabeling means sticking a radioactive atom onto a molecule of interest. So this is the whole production pipeline. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but essentially what you need is, first of all, a molecular moiety that will be able to target your disease. And then comes the role of really the radiochemists. The radiochemists, in my field, is the one who will work into discovering new ways to attach that atom with that molecule together. And then once you start scaling up, once you start going toward clinical and preclinical, you will need also to do some automatization, because to protect the operator, at a certain point, you can't do it with your hand anymore. It's too dangerous. So we need machines, we need robots to do that. And then there will be the usual evaluation of a new drug with preclinical study and clinical translation. And I've been asked to discuss about the challenges. What are we facing on a daily basis? What are we trying to tackle on a daily basis? Well, challenges, they are everywhere in that radiopharma development pipeline. It starts with the radiopharmaceutical design. You need to have something that is active, that is selective, that you need to optimize for the specific disease. And then comes the difficulties with the radiochemistry. You need to have something that is simple, that gives you good yield, that doesn't generate too much impurity, that doesn't use toxic reagents, and so on. Then the automation, you need to program, you need to make that robust, you need to be able to transfer everything that you did manually, you need to be able to transfer it into the machine, and that's a whole different world. And then comes the in vivo with its very harsh reality. When you're doing preclinical, you need to find a model, and that model, you need to make sure that the drug is actually surviving everything, and that may be the end. And same for the human clinical trial, plus the whole regulatory aspect. So me, I'm more interested into the chemical challenge. How do we manage to stick those two together, the radioactive atom and the vehicle? How do we do that chemistry? Well, there will be a lot of things that we can do, a lot of challenge that we have to tackle, starting with what kind of reagent we're going to use to react it with the radioactive atom. How do we produce that reactive atom in such a way that it's clean and pure? Of course, optimizing the reaction condition, as we do usually in organic chemistry. And then purification is a big thing as well. We need to be able to purify that drug in order to be able to use it in a human being. And here it's a completely different world. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but compared to organic chemistry, here it's completely different. You are dealing with very small amount of quantities. The usual rule of chemistry, they find their limits, and you have the fact that you're working with radioactivity. And as Pascal said, there are some rules and there are some difficulties and there are some risks as well. And we do everything to limit those risks. But because we have those things to put in place, that is more complex than with standard organic chemistry. And the clock is ticking because you have a radioactive atom that decays. So here, for example, when you're doing fluorine chemistry, well, the half-life is 2 hours. So you have to be fast and everything needs to be perfectly optimized. And that's a huge, huge challenge. And we face as well a chemistry limitation. We have some radiotracers that are amazing, that are really interesting, and yet the chemistry is absolutely dreadful. For here, I've put on that slide some examples of radiotracers that are extremely relevant for neurological for neurology, and yet you see the yields 5%, 2%, 1%, and that results in the costs of those products being awfully high. And that leads us to a paradox. We have good things, the biology gave us good molecules, but we're just incapable of doing the radiolabeling properly, and that's one of the main challenges. So we came up with a lot of different ideas. For example, at the University of Liège, back before I arrived, they did some photochemistry, or trying to use some new reagents, a bit more exotic reagents. And throughout the, let's say, last 10 to 20 years, there have been a flurry of new methodology that were deemed to be the future and amazing. So we did everything. We did a great job. We solved all the challenges. Well, unfortunately not. Because if you look at it, none of those amazing methodologies, they ended up being applied really for clinical trial. Most of the process, they still rely on old school chemistry. Why is that? Well, because between what you invent in your little lab at university and an industrial scale production, there are lots of things in between. There is practicalities. Is it really easy to do? Can you scale it up? Then there is the matter of automation. Can you make it robust? Can you make it always perfect? And then there is the big one. There is the regulatory. You need to have everything compliant, be it for drug and radioprotection. So all that has to be taken into account. And then there is also the problem of patent and licensing. So I think that overall, the take-home message is that we need younger chemists, we need young chemists to take part into that amazing adventure that is going to be the novel nuclear medicine, and to apply a more pragmatic approach. We need to develop things, we need to develop novel chemistries, we need to develop novel radiolabeling protocol that will be able to be applied, taking into account the reality of the clinical production of a radiotracer. And I think that we need everyone. We need people that can think not just about organic chemistry or just about radiochemistry. We need people that are open-minded and that will be able to take into account all the chemical innovation, but also the requirement specification. What is it that we will really need to use those methodology on the long term? And that's a multidisciplinary effort, and that will really be my take-home message for the end of that talk, is that first of all, there is no real radiochemists. We all start being standard organic chemists. And then we also need analytical chemists, we need process chemists, we need inorganic chemists. There is job for pretty much everyone, be it for radiopharmaceutical research, quality control, process development, or even regulatory and quality assistance. So there is really a need for people that are really passionate about that area, that field, and that will want to get involved into that. And the good thing, and Pascal already said it, and I want to really insist on that, is that there is a market. There is a lot of things going on at the moment. So the diagnostic aspect is already well established. But now the new big thing that has started to come and that is really growing on a monthly and yearly basis is the therapeutic. And the therapeutic, so using novel radionuclide, novel radioactive atom for internal radiotherapy, is the new era of nuclear medicine, and it's a wild west where there is a lot to do. So here you have a chart that shows you the increasing amount of clinical trial dealing with radioligand therapy. And that means that there is a need for chemists. Whichever field you are coming, there will be some job for you, there will be some work to do. And just to finish, just to put an image on what Pascal already said, this is specific for nuclear medicine because it comes from BioWin, but still it's perfectly relevant about that nuclear valley. Here it's the radiopharma valley. Here is a map with all the investor, all the private and public sector who has an involvement in nuclear medicine, and you can see that indeed Belgium is really at the heart of that field. I think I'm going to stop here. If there are some questions about how I did end up here, then maybe I will use the remaining slide, but I'm already over time as usual. So I'm going to stop here. And if there are some questions about my experience and what I did as studies and how I ended up doing radiochemistry, I will happily answer that afterwards.
Thank you very much, Thibault. We have a question from the audience, and it's linked to what you discussed. Is there a finite number of radioactive atoms that can be used for either diagnosis or therapy? And is there any newly discovered radioactive atom that seems promising?
So that's a very good question indeed. I would say that the atoms that are that are practically applicable for nuclear medicine, they are known already. I mean, we don't just invent some new atoms. They are already in the periodic table. What is new is that, especially for the therapeutic application, we are trying to assess whether some radioactive atoms that were previously just known on the physical aspect, okay, we know its half-life, we know everything about in terms of atomic structure. Let's see if we take that atom and if we try to apply it for therapy, is it going to work? And at the moment, it's exactly that. At the moment, in the therapeutic world, it's really the wild, wild west, where some try terbium, some try lead, some try actinium, some try lutetium. So the leading initially in terms of radioligand therapy, I'm talking about just radioligand therapy, not what was done previously with radium or iodine. But in terms of radioligand therapy, initially that was lutetium and actinium. And Pascal already mentioned the production of actinium that's coming in Belgium. But there are now many others. So, for example, K11 is trying to push for terbium. There is a big consortium assembling private and public sector pushing for astatine. And then there is the lead 212 that is coming as well. So in terms of the variety of radioactive atoms for the therapy, it's really wide. There are really many of them. But if the question was, are we going to use one of those very, very new atoms that have a half-life of 1 picosecond at the very end of the periodic table? Probably not.
Thank you very much, Thibault. Well, with that, our last guest is Sébastien Pennings, Dr. Sébastien Pennings, sorry, and he holds a PhD from the University of Namur. He focused on nanoparticle-based radiotherapy treatments. He is currently a radiobiology group leader at the Institut Jules Bordet, ULB, where his research specializes in cancer treatment using radiotherapy. In parallel, he is a scientific collaborator with NASA, contributing to Martian exploration programs and focusing on the prediction of cancer risk following exposure to ionizing radiation. And he is also associate professor at the University of Brussels and the University of Namur. Thank you, Sébastien Pennings. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will try to share the screen. Yeah, like this. So first of all, I will say thanks to the organizer and to the Royal Society of Chemistry for inviting me to speak on this very exciting topic of nuclear chemistry. It's really a pleasure for me because not so long time ago, I was already participating to this kind of young activities of the society, but as a young chemist myself. So now it's a bit the full cycle for me since I'm participating, but as a speaker. So really happy to be with you. So I'm a chemist by training. I obtained a master's degree in chemistry at the University of Brussels in 2014. And at that time, I rapidly realized that chemistry is really a central science at the crossroad of so many fields, so many disciplines. And I realized that by studying chemistry and chemical processes, you can really have the opportunity to tackle some challenges of modern society. And so when I started my scientific journey, I had this motivation to apply my chemistry skills to some fields, to make some bridge with other disciplines, and especially with medicine. And that's maybe why I tried to start by investigating a specific field, which is called radiobiology, which is a field at the interface between physics, chemistry, and biology. And this field led me from a PhD thesis at the University of Namur, you mentioned it, with the development of drugs based on nanoparticles, to some postdocs at NASA Ames Research Center, which is the biotechnological research center for the American Space Agency, and now to leading this radiobiology research units at the Institut Jules Bordet, which is the leading comprehensive research center. So it's an hospital which is treating patients with cancers. And so as a radiobiologist, I like, of course, to study radiobiology. And radiobiology is the study where you you try to understand how an ionizing radiation is interacting with living matters. So it could be cells, tissues, mice, humans, whatever. And so you were interested to know how this interaction from the physical point of view will lead at the end to some biological effects. And so at the molecular level, when you are irradiating, when you are sending some irradiations, you will, since it's an ionizing radiation, you will ionize the matter. And so in cells, you know, there is a lot of biomolecules, DNA, proteins, and whatever. And so when you are irradiating these molecules, you are creating ionized biomolecules. And so at the end, you are creating damages into these biomolecules, which will, at the end, of course, triggers a deleterious effect for the cells. And so even if you're not biologists, you know that this DNA, for example, is usually really restricted in a certain volume of the cell, which is called the nucleus. And so from a probability point of view, this is not the main mechanism of action. What is usually happening in a cell is the fact that this ionizing radiation is deposited not directly in the DNA, but more especially in the cytoplasm, in water. And so when you are ionizing water molecules, what you are creating is a class of really specific chemical molecules, which are known as reactive oxygen species or free radicals. And you know that these free radicals is really unstable chemical species. And so as every unstable chemical species, they will react because they would like to come back to stability. And so they will react with other molecules like water, but also with generic biomolecules, like DNA, protein, or whatever. I wrote it like the generic organic molecules, RH. And so by performing all of this chemical reaction, what you are producing is some biomolecules which are peroxidized. And this peroxidation is really impactful for the cells, and you will lead to really deleterious effect for the cells that was irradiated. And so this chemical phase is really a major component of radiobiology and radiation nuclear chemistry in general, because it's really the mediator between the physical dose deposition and at the end, the biological effects. And so we estimate that 70% of all the damage that you can produce when you are irradiating a cell or tissue is linked to these chemical phases. So you understand that this chemistry is really, really important in the field. And so by understanding the formation and how these chemical species are reacting between each other, you will understand and you will also have an impact on how the biology will take place after. And so we can also play a little bit with applications. For example, you can maximize this free radicals production. And so this will lead at the end to maximization of the biomolecular damages. And this is exactly what you try to do when you are performing applications like radiotherapy or so all of these therapeutic application where the idea is to maximize the cell death, tumor cell death, to the benefit of the patient, of course. But in the meantime, what you can maybe have the idea to have the opposite idea. The idea could be also to try to scavenge this free radicals reactivity in order to decrease the potential impact on the biological point of view. And this is exactly what we try to do in application like radio protection, like, for example, in space science, where you have astronauts which are continuously exposed to radiation and that will continuously be exposed to potential risk on their for the health. And so the idea in this kind of application is to play also on the chemistry, but to just give the chance to this kind of astronauts to survive to space flights, for example. So you see, this chemistry is really the central part of a lot of research. And so you can maybe say, oh, okay, so if this free radicals chemistry is really the central part, you might think that we understand everything on it, that we have a big expert on it. But the truth is the fact that it's really challenging. Radical chemistry is really a challenging field. It's challenging because, of course, there is a complexity linked to the radical chemistry by itself. You know that that following irradiation, you have this production, but the production is performed in a really short treatment time, something like picoseconds for the creation of these radicals and microseconds for the reaction. So you have very short lifetime, which is of course, limiting the possibilities to quantify them experimentally. And of course, you have also this production, which is performed in a biological environment, which is a highly complex environment because, okay, a cell is mainly composed of water, but it's not water alone. It's water, but it's a crowded medium with a lot of biomolecules, protein, DNA, lipids, whatever. And all of this complexity of the biological environment also complexified these studies. So we can ask yourself, okay, but how do we assess something that we cannot directly see or observe in such a complex environment? And that's the main challenge that we are facing in free radical chemistry. And that's why we need more and more simulation, computational models that are really required for this kind of study. And so we are more and more developing some simulations tools using multi-scale models with the idea to really link the physical energy deposition, all of this free radical chemistry, and in the end, to predict the final biological effects. And just to give you a really broad overview of the development, the idea is there is a lot of tools which are for the moment already available, but also under development for all of the steps, meaning that we have some tools for the physical step prediction with some toolkit like GN4, for example, where you can have an information of what will be the energy deposit when you have a specific radiation which is traveling inside matters. You have, of course, some chemical simulation tool that we are developing that take into account the reaction that a free radical can have, but also the kinetic of all of this reaction, with the idea to predict at the end what is the amount, the quantity that is produced in this kind of radicals per the irradiation. And of course, at the end, the idea is to link with the biological information that we can observe. And for example, here, something like the probability that the irradiated tissue will have complication in terms of biological effects. And so, in conclusion, I hope to show you that, of course, free chemistry and nuclear chemistry in general investigation is something quite challenging because there is this complexity due to the short time scale of production and reaction, and that needs more and more the opportunity to develop simulation tools. But to develop multi-scale simulation tools, we need, of course, people that can talk chemistry language, of course, but also all the disciplines language, physics, we need biology, we need computer science, medical science. And this is really the challenge that we face for the moment, is to find some people which are able to understand and speak all of this language in the same time, because we really need this transversal profile in the people and scientists. And so if I have just one advice to give you as a young chemist that there is probably in the audience, is really to go outside of your comfort zone. Speak with people, explore physics, explore biology, computer science, because society really needs this transversal profile to really address the modern challenge that we have in the society. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We might have a small question about those simulation tools. Statistician George Box once said, like famously, that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. How accurate are your simulations? Because you know the cell is quite a complex environment. How accurate can you get right now, as of now?
You are right. I mean, a simulation is what it is. It's simulation, so it's prediction. And so if you would like to be more accurate as possible, there is a lot of possibilities. I mean, for me, we have two big possibilities. You have to first have experimental data to confront, to validate. This is possible for the physics, for biology, quite well. For the chemistry, it's more challenging because we don't have really all the tools to have this really accurate quantification, especially in this biological environment, which is really complex. So what you need is probably, as we try to mention, to favorize multi-scale approach. Because by mixing all the approach, you can, that's what I expect, go further, and a little bit be closer on the accuracy. But you are right, this is still simulation, and this is the problem of the simulation by itself.
And do you have specific kind of simulations? You talked about kinetic and like molecular reaction. Are there some, I don't know, molecular dynamics, things like that to help?
This is something under investigation, which is, to be honest, not working really well for the moment. So, but this is something that we have for sure continue to investigate.
Thank you very much, Sébastien. I think we are good for the time. So here right now, we would be switching to the second section, but we have some pressing questions that have happened, that have popped out since we began this session. Would it be okay for you to maybe revisit some, and then we will go back to the general discussion? The first one is regarding Pascal's talk. You said that Belgium was the Silicon Valley for nuclear, and for you,
Not the
why
Silicon Valley, the
the
nuclear valley.
Nuclear Valley.
Silicon Valley is for the US.
It was under. But for you, why does our country hold this special place?
I think that, as said by Thibault, we need to be pragmatic. But I think that regarding other countries, we are already quite pragmatic in Belgium. And the regulations to allow us to do some more experience, to construct some installation, to test some installation. It's not always possible in other countries in the world. And some countries are really restrictive for the science, not only the science, but the test with nuclear isotopes, nuclear activities. So we have to keep that in Belgium, the pragmatism or way to work, I will say. It's also recognized in the arts and so on. The Belgian peoples are well known in France, for example, for the maturity and the pragmatism and so on. And I think it's also percolating in the science and certainly in the nuclear and the chemistry.
Thank you.
We have maybe if you can comment, I
sure.
think also another point is probably the really special environment that we have in Belgium. We have companies, we have the really key leaders in the world in the development of nuclear application. We have research in the university related to all of this nuclear environment, and I think this constitutes also a really interesting environment, especially for the research and development. So maybe contributing also to this really special place that we have in Belgium.
Yeah, and we have also a long story, in fact. It started in the beginning of last centuries with the production of radium-226, for example. We are the world leader in the production of radium-226 used at this moment in the clocks and so on. No, it's since a few years it has been a waste, and now the gram of radium-226 is 3 million euros. And 10 years ago, I threw to nearest ONDRAF in Belgium 2 grams. So I threw 6 million euro in the waste. And it's life, in fact. What is a waste today is maybe not a waste tomorrow. And our long experience in the manipulation of radioactivity, as well as SCK and ERA, but also in the different labs in Namur, Liège, but also Brussels, Gand, Louvain-la-Neuve, and so on. We used to manipulate activity. We have also, as you mentioned also the big companies. IBA, for example, is the world leader in the production of cyclotrons. So we have a long story and its stay. And the experience and the competence of the Belgian peoples, the Belgian experts, are really appreciated in the world.
Just to bounce back on that, what would be, according to all of you, the most critical innovations that came from Belgium in your field, in this field?
There are many, actually. There are many. So for example, indeed, IBA is a world leader in cyclotron. So they have been improving and refining the cyclotrons, and now it's the proton therapy as well. They are also, I think they are leader as well in proton therapy. I don't want to say stupid thing, but I think they are also leader in proton therapy. So it's not just what we used to do, is that there is a constant innovation, and there is that really will to remain and to try and stay at the forefront. And even though there is also another aspect, that even though we tend to always complain about funding and so on, there is actually quite a lot of funding and incentive towards that research in radioactive. I will say there isn't enough, but still there is. And,
There is a
we
lot,
have
yeah.
many funding schemes, like I mentioned BioWin as well, but there is also all that big projects that IBA is building for both actinium and astatine is another example. So there is that support also for research and development. And there, if we continue, there is also IRE with the generator. They have invented some more advanced generator, gallium generator, that are more user-friendly, less error-proof, and so on. There is that constant innovation here in Belgium that is really important, and that is really pushing the field and making indeed Belgium a very important actor in that.
Yeah, you have also traces in Liège, for example. You have also Telix, who is now implemented in Senef. It's an Australian company who implements this production center here in Belgium, and they are developing also some molecules and some production centers. So it's a growing sector in Belgium.
And there seems to be quite a close cooperation between industry and academic as well, or at least you talk a lot one with another, which is something to note.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's really important as well. I think that's one of the fields where, I mean, at least me personally, I see the most interaction between the private sector and the public sector, because the nuclear field has that specificity that on our own we can't do it, because it's so expensive and there are so much regulation and all the radio protection and so on, that the only way to survive is to combine and work together. And that's the case with the HUB, that's the case here in Liège, where the companies are working where I am. And there are plenty of other examples like that, where we have those complex, well, not complex, but places where people work together. And that's, I think, inherent to the nature of nuclear chemistry and nuclear science.
And we had to take the advantage of the so small country that we have. I mean, such a concentration of companies, research center in so small country. Definitely, it's also an added value for this collaboration.
Everyone, in fact, know everyone in the sector.
That is quite precious, like, it's impressive. We have some more tailored towards, so for Thibaut, more on the medicinal, the radio labeling. I have one who's asked that you showed mostly halogens as the radioactive labels. Is there any ways in which other common heteroatoms could be used for radio labeling?
Yeah. So I did put on the slide fluorine, because that's part of our job at Liège, but indeed there are many others, and in terms of therapeutic, most of them, if not all, well, there is the iodine on the side, but they are metallic. They are metallic radionuclides, and there indeed it's a different. I saw the question in the Q&A, and indeed it's a different chemistry, but still yet challenging. The challenges are different. The chemistry is working much better because it's chelation chemistry, but the challenges are different. So yes, I put on the slides the fluorine chemistry, but there is also the carbon chemistry, although a little bit more restrained, but there is a lot going on with the metal chemistry at the moment, hence the need for inorganic and organometallic chemists, because all that is about chelating a metal and making sure that it reaches the body. And that will be even more important with therapeutic, radiometals because you really want it to go where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I see that you've killed two birds with one stone and discussed a bit the other question. Thank you very much. We have one question which was more targeted towards you, Sebastian, but I think we can make it quite general. It was first, what are the most important hard skills and soft skills to have belonging to you to work in nuclear medicine? Let's just say nuclear chemistry or in your field. So according to you, what are the most important hard skills and soft skills to have?
I can start maybe, but I think you have to be open-minded. As I mentioned, of course, nuclear chemistry is really at the frontiers between all these disciplines. So if you would like to just stay in your comfort zone, just do the classical chemistry that you know, that you are an expert on it, it will not work. It will not work because you have to discuss, you have to exchange with people from different backgrounds, and so you have to be open-minded. I think this is really an important soft skills. For hard skills, I will say it more depends on really the application, of course, but for the soft skills, definitely be open-minded, be to have the willingness to really be in interdisciplinary environments. Justice is important.
Yeah, and bouncing back on that, I would say that because the comments that I often hear from students is, oh, but we haven't had any lecture about that. I didn't, because I was in France and there wasn't any lecture about that. I mean, I became a radiochemist, but I wasn't a radiochemist by training. By training, I was just a plain old school organic chemist. So don't put barrier to yourself. You have to go beyond those barriers and not say, oh, but I don't know anything about nuclear science. I don't know anything about, yeah, and what? You will learn it on the spot. And that's how it works, essentially, especially in that field, I think.
Yeah, fully agree. I heard some intervention of Thibault who said, yeah, radio protection, regulatory bodies and regulation and limitations. And for example, in our case, we are obliged to follow a course at least 120 years on a 6-year basis. In our case, in our company, it's in fact more than 100 hours per year continuous educations. So that means that we are continuously learning from other type of installation, from other exploitant, from other university to discuss the problem, to try to find together the solution. So we have to stay open-minded and in a continuous way, a continuous movement, I will say.
As I said to students, usually university give you the possibility to acquire some skills, but this is your after the idea is you can just play with the skills and adapt the skills to the question that you would like. And if the question is nuclear chemistry, fine, but you just have to adapt yourself.
Yes, just a small remark, Sebastian. I don't know if you know that at the very beginning I was an economist, so I'm far away from my first studies.
I wanted to, with a bit hijacked the planning. We are now in section 2. We happen to be here. I wanted to ask you to break the ice for you. What is one misconception about nuclear chemistry that you encounter often, and how would you correct it? I don't know if any of you have any idea.
I invite you to the presentation of the student of second niveau for this Friday. They will demystify fake news about the radio protection and radioactivity, and there we have a contest between 70 schools. So it's also funny to learn about that. But I think that it's few years ago when you are speaking about radioactivity, it was a fair. And now when you are speaking about radioactivity, I think that the people understand what you mean and what we are doing. But I think, and I have already said that to the responsible for the communication from the nuclear power plant here in Belgium, we have a lack in communications. And we are in our field, but we discuss together, but just together, and not with the public. And the public is quite prudent and precautious about the radioactivity. For the public, radioactivity is Chernobyl, Fukushima, and Hiroshima and Nagasaki, point and the line. And it's not so restricted. There are a lot of applications, and now more and more the public is aware about that, and it's nice to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely a lack of communication because, as you mentioned, Chernobyl, Fukushima, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, all of this is the common way that people in the public see the nuclear fields. But at the end, Thibault already showed us nuclear medicine is also an application of nuclear, but basically it saves life every day. But we don't talk about it. So there is a lack of communication for sure, and that's probably the starting point.
Yeah, every year at the beginning of my lecture, I do a test like that. I ask students what do they, if I say radioactivity, what comes to mind first? And I create that nice cloud word, and in usually it's bomb, energy. So energy is coming.
Okay.
It's bomb, energy, military, things like that. So indeed, things that are, I think the main issue is that it has a negative connotation. That's the thing we have to fight for, to try and remove. It's true, we can't deny it. And I mean, you just have to open the news every day these days to see the negative connotation. But still, I think that we have to pass that message that it can also have very, very positive outcome.
Thank you very much. We have sort of an aspect that has been coming through and through what you've talked, but we've never really addressed it fully. Is that in the nuclear field, there are a lot of regulations. There are a lot of things to take into account, multiple challenges due on that. How does those regulations impact your experiments, impact your day-to-day life, and so on and so forth? And I think, Pascal, maybe you could say a lot about regulations.
Yeah, I can speak up to Sunday evening if you want. There is effectively a lot of regulation, but the positive point it's the fact that the regulation is the same if you are working in hospitals, in a research lab, or in a nuclear power plant. So for us, it's not easy once you have to apply that to a nuclear chemistry, to nuclear medicine services, to nuclear power plants, but the basics are the same. In fact, there are three basics in the radio protections. It's the justifications, those limitations, and ALARA principle. If you stop to the first point, it's the justifications. Why do you want to be exposed? Why do you want to use that? If there is a positive answer to that, you can do it, but you have to apply some regulation. And it's not so difficult. As Thibault mentioned, we have to stay pragmatic. We cannot have the same level of request to a nuclear medicines department as in a nuclear power plant. The risks are not the same. So we have to adapt and to translate the regulations to the different exploitants. But the regulation, it's also funny if you learn that and if you have the use to use it. But yeah, you can take pleasure with your job if you love that, in fact.
Yeah, and I think that there is also another battle here about misconception is that the first time that you hear regulation, it's again something very negative. Although here it's very important to highlight that the main role of regulation in that field is not to be a pain, it's to protect you. That's the very fundamental aspect of that of radio protection and of that regulation in that field. So if you get something, if you get a remark, that's usually for the best of you. So it may mean that you screwed up, but that's for the next time not to screw up and to limit the risks. So I think that I think that regulation in that field should actually be seen as something very positive, and that's again something that needs to be. That's a message that needs to be given, and indeed we also need some more people in that field as well, and some more people that are trained and that, as Sebastian said, that can understand the needs and all the different aspects indeed.
And
so to answer your question, sorry, because there was a question about what's the impact on your experiment. Well, none if you do your job properly. So if you do your job properly, there shouldn't be any impact. You just learn the rule, get trained on a regular basis, apply that properly, and in theory, the only outcome, the only impact that it will have in your experiments is that you will be safer. And I think personally, coming from organic chemistry, now that I have a little bit more expertise in the field of nuclear chemistry, I think there is a lot to take actually from radio protection and bring it towards organic chemistry, because organic chemistry lab are, in comparison, and that I tell all the time to my students, in comparison, I'm far less safe in an organic chemistry lab than in a radiochemistry lab. And that's also something I used to tell to my mom, because when I started to do radiochemistry, she was awfully afraid. She was like, but that's why you're losing your hair. No, it's not. I was far more exposed and in greater danger in an organic chemistry lab than I am in a radiochemistry lab.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I say always in the nuclear sector, you have 5 levels of control coming from the user itself to the federal agency. If you are going to the restaurants, there are only 2 levels, the cookers and the agency for the, I don't know the word in English, but it's the control of fooding and so on. So there you are eating something and there are only 2 levels of controls. And if you are working in the nuclear sector, there are 5 levels of control. So it's a safe domain, I would say. And Thibaut, I'm totally agree with Thibaut. If you are working with chemical products, who control that? The user, 1 level of control. A few years ago, we made distillation of benzene in the labs. It was possible, but it was not possible to work with radioactivity as you want at this moment already. So you can make a choice. Organic chemistry or nuclear chemistry.
And so all the regulation of nuclear environment, maybe we have to take this and try to translate to other fields, definitely.
Thank you. We will have Geraldine coming in for the rest of the questions.
So thank you for the nice discussion. I just wanted to pop some of the comments that you said. So there are definitely some students interested in pivoting to nuclear chemistry. And specifically, what would you advise to pivot from classical organic chemistry, having a background in organic chemistry, and then switch to more nuclear chemistry? Would you have any advice for young students that would really do the choice of going to nuclear chemistry with a background in organic chemistry, or more fundamental and classical chemistry, I would say? Maybe Thibaut?
Well, as I said, if you want to go towards, let's say, experimental applied nuclear science, I would just say go for it. I mean, for example, the PhD that I am hiring, they don't have background in nuclear science. The last 2 PhD that I hired, they were just normal organic chemists. That's it, period, full stop. And back when I was, because I didn't have the time to mention my background, but when I was working at Traces and when I was head of the radiochemistry team, the people I was hiring, they were standard chemistry technician or organic chemist. Because it's very rare that you actually find someone who has been trained. And when there is, it's a speed run to get it. And all companies will fight and try to attract it because it's very, very rare. There are a little number of universities who are actually capable of training radiochemists, and that will be at the PhD level. Even me at the University of Liège, I give a lecture, but I mean, it's worth what it's worth. So I'm trying to cover pretty much everything we mentioned today. So ionization of matter, effect, a little tiny bit of radio protection, a little bit of activation of metals, a lot more on radio labeling, obviously, because that's my expertise. But it's not because you had that lecture that you are going to be an expert in the field. Not at all. Not at all. So I would say let's just go for it and get trained on the spot.
It's very nice to hear that.
I think for the regulatory aspect, however, for Pascal, there are training if you want to become radio protection officer or things like that.
Yeah, there are specific courses for the radio protection officer, but it's also limited. In fact, and it's only a few hours, between 8 and 24 hours. So it's quite limited. To become an expert, you need to have the basics, I will say, the chemistry and the physics and the biology. But you learn a lot when you are doing your job. And if you read and if you learn about your colleagues, about during the conference and so on, and the expertise on site, it's very important. So it's you don't be to be afraid of that. You have to jump and to try. An expert is someone who has tried every possibilities. Huh? Don't forget that. Huh? The good and the false.
Yeah. Then it's good to see some senior people saying that who have expertise and really know that the right path to take is to really dare it, try it, and then do it. And that's, I think very good.
True. I think it's particularly true in that field. I would say that it's a bit true everywhere, but particularly in that field.
Totally, yes.
Especially because there is no dedicated courses in Belgium for all of this. I mean, it's some courses, like you mentioned, at Liège, at Lycée Louvain. But yeah, I mean, I think that the main leader for the moment in the country, they teach by themselves, by performing a lot of discussion, by networking, by also teaching each other. But at the end, no specific lectures.
Yes. So if nothing else to say on that point, I had another question from Augustin. And Augustin was wondering, I mean, it's a question for all of you, maybe a bit specifically to Pascal, but what would be the best impact of scientists on the overall direction taken by the government in place now in Belgium in your opinion? And compared to what happened back in the 20 last
Yeah, I don't know if someone want to answer to that. I answered already via the chat to Augustin. In fact, for the regulations, we have, for example, the Scientific Council of the FANC. And in the Scientific Council of the FANC, it's only scientists and people with a lot of experience. And we are discussing there the big project, I will say, in Belgium, and the big project in the sense of what could be, of what will be the regulation for that. Is it possible to do that in Belgium? Is it not possible? Do we have the competence? How can we maintain the competence? All those points are discussed within the Scientific Council, and the Scientific Council is to assist the FANC in the decisions, and the FANC depends on the Minister of the Interior. So that means that's also the politics, in fact, and the FANC is at the base of the regulation in radio protection in Belgium. So there it's existing. There is something. For the rest, I cannot say if there is a lot of politics who have a council of scientific peoples who can advise them. For example, the energy, I'm sure that there is also some peoples there. But for example, for the environment, I'm not sure that there are scientists who have experience in nuclear fields, for example.
Don't know. Yeah. Then so to answer a little bit on that question, I'm not sure it's going to answer it perfectly, but in terms of research, so fundamental research, what we are trying to achieve, and it's a bit difficult to be honest, but what we are trying to achieve is to go through official body like FNRS or BioWin or things like that, or the Walloon region, when we apply for those funding and so on, there is always a discussion on, okay, and how is it evolving in that field and so on. So we are trying to always push and say, okay, try to let them know up there that there is actually not only an interest, but let's be honest, what matters is economy. And for that, we do have really an impact because, as Pascal mentioned, there are not only Belgium-based company, but we are also attracting big player from outside. So and that matters in terms of political way. So, but I think we still need to do more about that because I still think that even in the higher political rank, I would say, I'm afraid we also suffer from that negative misconception about nuclear. And nuclear is always the power plant and what do we do with the nuclear waste and so on. And because that's what people voting will also think. So it's a bit of a circle. So the idea is here to try and push the awareness toward the political aspect that there is also things to do there. And it's not only good, but it's not only good for the research and potentially medicine and so on, but it's also good for the people. You take Telix, so I don't have the numbers for Telix, but I think they are now far beyond 100 employees. Traces, they went from 50 to 400 in less than 5 years. IBA, it's ever growing as well. So
3,000.
all that is, yeah, massive. So all that is a massive amount of people who are actually getting employed and getting paid. So that's, I think, where we can try to leverage the interest of that field toward the politics.
Yeah, and so this shows us that we need, of course, to better communicate, and we already discussed this, to the public, but also to the politics, and so make really an effort that people understand that radioactivity in nuclear domain is not just power plants. This is much more than that, and with economical advantage, with a lot of research, with a really benefits for the society. So this all of this that we have to become better communicate. Definitely.
Yeah, and there is also what we call the Nuclear Forum. It's an association of the producer of electricity, mainly electricity, via the nuclear power plant. And if you are looking there, what's the word? The sondage in the populations. Now it's 75% of the public who is positive regarding the nuclear reactors. So it's quite another point of view than 20 years ago. And so it's coming from the public, certainly, but it's, as mentioned by Thibaut, it's also coming from the big investments down in Belgium. We are not speaking about 1,000 or 1 million euro, but it's 100 times more. I have already had some discussion. The people say, yeah, 500,000 euro, it's nothing. It's nothing. And if you heard that, you can say, okay, we are going further.
Far further, I guess.
And far further,
also
yeah.
people are not very aware of like the nuclear reactors that actually are used right now in Belgium evolved a lot and are still under evolution with a lot of new technologies right now for fine-tuning and optimizing the different ways that we can use them and take advantage of the nuclear chemistry and nuclear energy. So
yeah, but just a point about the nuclear reactor, and also my first field.
yeah, and I have a question after as well.
Yeah. If you are taking the nuclear reactor in Belgium, the lifetime is 40 years. The same reactors in the US is 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reactors. It's the same. It's just a question of decisions at one moment.
Yeah, it is, and a question of budget and all these. But then to go on the discussion on nuclear reactors, I pinned a question on the forum from Grégoire, who actually asked a very precise question. So he's talking about the competition among the small modular reactor startups. And he wanted to know that, okay, there is a strong competition among these startups to be the first ones to develop some and to commercialize their own technology, so new reactors. And so then what do you think? And do you think that a certain type of SMR, so of small modular reactors, will actually have an advantage over another to be the first one to be commercialized? And do you expect also any big advantage over current nuclear power plants or not so much?
Okay, it's difficult to take a position for one other type of small modular reactor due to the fact that I am also in the scientific council of the FANC, and we have a lot of discussion about that. And on the second part of the questions, my point of view is ask first to the people. Do you want a small reactor in Liège, a small reactor in Namur, a small reactor in Charleroi, a small reactor in Brussels, a small reactor in Louvain-la-Neuve, a small reactor in Mons, and so on? Or do you want to have a big one at one place? And we have still two positions in Belgium, Doel and Tihange, and it's already accepted there. So my point of view is, I think that we have to go to build a new reactor in Tihange and a new reactor in Doel. There is the place there is enough water to cool that, and the public around is working on the site, so they know what are the risks, they know what are the advantage or the disadvantage sometimes. But as to the people of Liège, if you want to put a small modular reactor on the Sint-Lambert Place, I'm not sure that it will be accepted. And the risk, in fact, are the same with a small and a big. A big, you have more activity, of course, but the risk, it's an industrial system. So it's in discussions, in fact. But I think that the point of view for that, it's the public acceptance.
Yeah, and some other misconception that I always have pretty much every year from the students at the beginning of the year is that they actually believe that the risk about nuclear reactor is a nuclear explosion. It isn't.
It isn't. Not. No.
So whatever the size, it's not going to make a bigger boom because it's bigger and it has more nuclear fuel. It's never ever a nuclear explosion. So yeah, but that's also something that people don't know. When they hear about Chernobyl or Fukushima, they think that it was a nuclear explosion, but it's not.
Okay, maybe I have a bit a random question from the chat, so I'm gonna read it just straight because I didn't have time to moderate it too much. So that's an anonymous user, so we can do whatever we want with this. So the comment is, I heard recently in the media that Google is planning to build or to buy nuclear power plants to power their data centers, which I mean actually makes sense because they need some energy. And also for AI purpose. And he said, I'm a little bit worried about the how to deal with these nuclear power plants by the companies that might try to cut safety costs for profit. So that's like the balance that you have to choose. What is your opinion on that? Do you think that with the regulations, is it enough, or the profit could win on it?
There is 2 points, in fact. Huh?
But it's in the US as well, huh?
Yeah, the first point is the rules are the same for everyone. That's the first one. So if you want to have a small modular reactor in your garden, you can ask it. You can. But it will be discussed in the FANC, in the Scientific Council, and it will be accepted or not. But you will be obliged to follow the rules, who are the same for everyone. Anyway, that's the first. The second point, do you think that ENGIE in Tihange and Doul's is doing just electricity for fun or for money? That's the same, in fact. And EDF in France is also an industrial company who is doing. But the first point is the justification. The first point of the regulation in radio protection is the justifications. Do we need electricity? And everyone in Belgium know that we have problem with our approvisionment or feeding in electricity for the moment. Everyone want to have an electric cars, but we are not able to put electricity in our cars. We have not enough producing center. So we need to have something. But
and so then I guess the pragmatism of Belgian people could also help in that direction, right? To moderate that and to show the example at some point.
Yeah, but if Google or another exploitant, industrial one, want to construct and to build a nuclear power plant, as I said, the rules will be the same. So, and the imposition, the constraint, the dose constraint for the public and so on will be the same. If Google have enough money to construct his own small modular reactor, there is no reason to say no, in fact. But if they have to have those electricity, of it's their own production, of they will take the electricity from coal power plant, coal plant, or or own electricity, in fact. So the problem is there. We want to have more and more electricity, so we have to produce that. And if you are thinking about the fact that the French people will sell us electricity, during the summer maybe, but in the winter, I'm not sure. So we have to build something in Belgium. Yeah.
Okay, thank you
when and where it will be for the future.
Okay.
Open question.
That remains like an open question indeed, and that's also very interesting. So I guess we have answered most of the questions. There were a lot, and like who wonder any questions, like you can meet some experts at some point, and that's also like the kind of webinar where you can really interact with them. So that's very interesting indeed. So thank you for your answers, and I guess we will slowly conclude, and I will give the floor back to Martin for this.
Thank you, Geraldine, and thank you to all the people asking questions. We've been quite overwhelmed, I think we can say it, with the amount of questions that we had, but it's a pleasure. We wanted to ask a closing question, which would be the take-home message, but basically I think it's already been addressed during what you said. The question was, what advice would you give to young researchers considering now nuclear chemistry? And from what I've heard, the advice is just do it. Go there, try it. There's no wrong way to enter the field, and practice, build your own experience, and you can do it. I guess that's what you all agree on. Do you have anything to add, maybe?
Fully agreeing.
And
personally, I would add, but that's my personal opinion. Personally, I would add, try to move around as well. maybe not just don't stay just at one specific university. Try to see what's happening elsewhere, because you will learn more by seeing other methods and other techniques, or maybe even other regulations. Me, for example, I'm always a bit mixed because I did most of my radiochemistry in London, in the UK, which is obviously not the same regulation as here, and then part as well also in France. So, and that's how you learn basically. So I think moving a bit is also quite good.
Thank you very much.
And small, maybe Martin, small remark. If some of the people here in the discussion want to ask some questions later, they can maybe pass the questions via the SRC to us.
Of course.
Yeah, never mind.
Of course, and it would be our pleasure to transfer the questions. With this, well, we will conclude on those final words. I will now thank everyone that made this possible. And first of which is you, the speakers. So thank you very much, Pascal Froment, Thibaut Gendron, and Sébastien Pennings. You took some time that I know you are quite busy and your time is quite precious, but you are here with us tonight to answer those really nice questions and to share with us your passion, your knowledge. And that means a lot to us. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
I would like to thank also the Belgian Royal Society of Chemistry, of whom we are a small division that trust us and support us in everything that we do. I would like to thank all the members of Young Chemists Committee who made this event possible. And more specifically, you've seen Geraldine, who handled all the questions and co-hosted this webinar. There is Dorothée behind the scenes. You did not see her, but she also looked at all the messages and took everything. So thank you, Dorothée. And also Maxime, who did all the communication for the event. And really finally, but not the least at all, thank you all, our audience, for being here in such large number. We were a bit hesitant. It was our first webinar for our team, our first ever for the history of the young chemists. I think it's been maybe 10 years, something like that. So we are very glad to see that it worked well, that everything is doing perfectly as we planned, and it really warms our heart to see your reaction, your questions, and your implication in this event. We thank you all very, very much, and we hope to see you in the future to a next event of the Young Chemist. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.